A sudden, violent jolt tore through the profound darkness, ripping consciousness from the abyss. It wasn't the gentle awakening of a new day, but a brutal, disorienting shock that sent a wave of panic through every nerve ending. Absolute, suffocating darkness pressed in from all sides, a tangible weight that stole breath and reason. The air was thick, heavy, carrying a strange, earthy scent that filled the nostrils with an unsettling pungency. Above, a dull, muffled thud resonated, then another, like distant drums pounding a funeral march. Disorientation seized her. Where was she? What had happened? The questions clawed at her mind, but coherent thought remained elusive, submerged beneath a rising tide of primal fear. A scream welled up, desperate and raw, but it died in her throat, choked by the oppressive confinement. Her hands instinctively shot out, flailing in the black void, fingers scraping against a rough, unyielding surface. Wood. It was wood, close and unyielding. A terrifying realization began to crystallize in the swirling chaos of her thoughts. She was in a box. A coffin. Flashes, disjointed and hazy, began to pierce the fog of terror. A grand, opulent room, the scent of lavender and illness. A fever, burning through her veins, blurring the edges of reality. A doctor, his face grim, his pronouncements hushed and solemn. Blurred figures, weeping softly, their faces indistinct. Then, the chilling declaration echoing in the cavern of her memory. She's gone. The horrifying truth, cold and undeniable, slammed into her with the force of a physical blow. She had been declared dead. She had been buried alive. The air, already thin, grew impossibly scarce. Each breath became a desperate, ragged struggle, a fight for mere existence against an invisible enemy. With a surge of adrenaline, Eleanor pushed against the wooden lid above her, her arms straining, muscles screaming in protest. Splinters, sharp and unforgiving, pierced her skin, but the wood held firm, an impenetrable barrier to freedom. A chilling thought, cold as the earth above, whispered through her mind. Is this how it ends? Trapped, suffocating, forgotten. Then, a sound. Faint, almost imperceptible at first, a rhythmic creaking from far above. It was subtle, easily dismissed as the settling of the earth, yet it snagged at the frayed edges of her hope. Could it be? Could someone be near? Or was it merely the cruel trick of a mind teetering on the brink of despair? The sound grew infinitesimally louder, a whisper promising either salvation or a deeper terror. The creaking sound intensified, each resonance sending a jolt through the cold wood, vibrating through her very bones. It was no longer a distant whisper, but a definite rhythmic groan, suggesting movement, perhaps even a presence. This sound, in its growing clarity, offered a possibility that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The creaking sound intensified, each resonance sending a jolt through the cold wood, vibrating through her very bones. It was no longer a distant whisper, but a definite rhythmic groan, suggesting movement, perhaps even a presence. This sound, in its growing clarity, offered a possibility that was both terrifying and exhilarating. As the initial surge of panic began to recede, replaced by a cold, desperate resolve, her senses sharpened, focusing on the immediate surroundings of her wooden prison. The confined space, once a mere instrument of her terror, began to offer new, unsettling details. Her fingers, still raw from scraping against the lid, now traced the interior of the coffin. The wood was not plain or rough, but surprisingly smooth, almost polished. The lining felt like rich, embroidered silk, a stark contrast to the grim reality of her situation. This was no pauper's burial. This was a coffin of considerable expense, suggesting a certain status, a life of means. As her fingers explored further, they brushed against a faint raised pattern on the lid's underside. An inscription, barely legible in the absolute darkness, but discernible by touch. The material felt undeniably old, certainly not of the modern era she dimly recalled. Then a name surfaced, a whisper from the depths of her subconscious. Eleanor Vance. The name resonated with a strange familiarity, a sense of belonging. Images flickered, disjointed yet vivid. A grand house, its imposing facade rising against a twilight sky. Servants moving silently through polished halls. A specific ball gown, shimmering with intricate beadwork, worn at a triumphant social gathering. And with these images, a year solidified in her mind, chillingly precise. 1888. The 19th century. The horrifying realization now fully dawned, not just that she had been buried alive, but that she had somehow been transported, not merely to a grave, but to a different time. A memory fragment, sharp and painful, sliced through the confusion. A hushed conversation, voices barely audible, yet distinct. A familiar face, her cousin Beatrice, her eyes alight with an unsettling glint. A small glass vial, held delicately between Beatrice's slender fingers. Then, a sudden sharp pain in her chest, a burning sensation that spread rapidly, followed by an overwhelming wave of darkness. Unconsciousness. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening thud. Beatrice. Her trusted confidant, her closest kin, the one who had always feigned affection. The motive became sickeningly clear. Inheritance, of course. Eleanor was the sole heir to the vast Vance fortune, and Beatrice had always coveted it. But there was more. A secret, simmering desire that had always lurked beneath Beatrice's polite exterior. Her obsession with James. Another memory, tender and bittersweet, pushed through the haze. The kind, earnest eyes of a young man, his smile gentle, his touch warm. James. Their love was a forbidden one, a clandestine affair due to family expectations and social standing. A secret engagement, a whispered promise of elopement, a future planned in hushed tones beneath moonlit skies. The knowledge that Beatrice also desired James, that she had always envied Eleanor's happiness, now twisted the knife of betrayal. It wasn't just her life that had been stolen, but her love, her future, her very identity. The crushing weight of this profound betrayal settled upon her. A cold, heavy shroud. The air continued to dwindle, each breath now a shallow, desperate gasp. The memories, though clarifying, offered no immediate escape. A new, urgent imperative took hold. Survival. Her hands, driven by a primal instinct, began a desperate search within the confines of the coffin. She needed anything, anything at all, that might offer a means of escape. A loose nail, a splintered shard of wood, anything that could pry, scratch, or break the oppressive barrier. Her fingers scrabbled against the silken lining, probing every seam, every corner, a frantic dance against encroaching oblivion. Then, a faint metallic clink. It was barely audible, masked by the rhythmic creaking from above and the frantic beat of her own heart. But it was there. Her fingers, guided by instinct, followed the sound, brushing against something small, hard, and cool. It suggested there might be more than just wood and cloth in this final resting place, a hidden possibility in the silent darkness. Her fingers, trembling with a mixture of terror and hope, closed around the object. It was small, cold, and intricately worked. A locket. Not just any locket, but the very one James had given her, a token of their forbidden love, hidden within a secret pocket of her burial gown. Its delicate silver edge, designed to hold a miniature portrait, now felt surprisingly sharp against her thumb. A tool, however improbable, had presented itself. Eleanor, fueled by a renewed surge of adrenaline and a fierce will to live, began to meticulously scrape at the coffin's seams. The wood, though old and softened by time, proved surprisingly resilient, each tiny fragment that broke away a testament to the coffin's sturdy construction and her own burgeoning desperation. Hours blurred into an agonizing eternity, marked only by the growing exhaustion in her limbs and the relentless suffocating pressure of dwindling oxygen. Each scrape, each agonizing effort, became a silent declaration of her refusal to surrender. Her breath came in shallow, ragged gasps, her lungs aching with every inhale. Yet, She persisted, the image of James, of their shared future, burning brightly behind her eyelids, a beacon in the oppressive darkness. The locket, clutched tightly in her hand, became an extension of her will, a tiny instrument of defiance against the crushing weight of earth and wood. Then, a miracle. A small crack, a hairline fracture, appeared in the wood directly above her face. It was almost imperceptible, a mere whisper of separation in the solid timber, but it was there. And then, another, branching off from the first, a spiderweb of nascent fissures. Through the narrowest of these openings, a tiny, almost ethereal sliver of light pierced the absolute darkness, a promise of the world beyond. With it came a rush of slightly fresher air, cool and invigorating, a lifeline to her starved lungs. The sudden influx of oxygen, however minimal, sent a wave of renewed strength coursing through her veins. The possibility of escape, once a distant, impossible dream, now shimmered with tangible hope. Just as this profound hope began to settle within her, the muffled thumps returned, closer this time, more distinct. They were no longer the distant rhythmic creaking of the earth settling, but something else entirely. Footsteps, voices, hushed and indistinct, but undeniably human. A cold knot of fear tightened in her stomach. Was it rescue, a benevolent hand reaching out from the world above? Or was it further danger, the malevolent presence of those who had condemned her to this fate? The dilemma was excruciating. Should she remain hidden, risking suffocation for the chance of anonymity? Or should she make noise, drawing attention and potentially exposing herself to her enemies? The decision, though fraught with peril, was swift. Survival demanded action. With newfound resolve, Eleanor began to make faint scratching noises with the locket, tapping rhythmically against the coffin lid. It was a desperate gamble, a tiny plea for help in the vast silence of the graveyard. The hope was that someone kind, someone compassionate, would hear her plight. But the terrifying counterthought lingered, a chilling whisper in the back of her mind. What if it was Beatrice, come to check on her handiwork, to ensure her rival was truly gone? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, colder than the earth itself. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped, directly above her. The muffled sounds ceased, replaced by an unnerving silence. Then a shadow, dark and ominous, fell across the small crack in the lid, obscuring the precious sliver of light. The shadow lingered, a heavy blanket of dread pressing down upon Eleanor. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. Then, with a groan of straining wood, the coffin lid began to lift. Slowly, agonizingly it rose, revealing not the triumphant, cruel face of Beatrice, but the vast, star-dusted expanse of a midnight sky. Cool, crisp air, sharp with the scent of damp earth and distant pine, rushed into the confined space, shocking her lungs with its invigorating chill. It was a sensation so profoundly different from the stagnant, suffocating air she had endured that it felt like a rebirth. Her eyes, accustomed to absolute darkness, struggled to adjust, blinking against the shimmering vastness above. As her vision cleared, the eerie landscape of a rural, isolated graveyard materialized around her. Mist, like ghostly shrouds, clung to the ancient gravestones, their weathered surfaces etched with names and dates long forgotten. Twisted, skeletal trees clawed at the inky sky, their bare branches silhouetted against the distant glow of a crescent moon. It was a scene both terrifying and overwhelmingly beautiful, a stark tableau of life and death. And she, Eleanor Vance, was inexplicably caught between them. A figure knelt beside the open grave, his silhouette bulky against the faint starlight. He was an old man, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, etched deep by years of toil and sorrow. His eyes, wide and startled, reflected the shock of finding a living soul emerging from a coffin. Then, as the initial surprise faded, they softened into an expression of profound pity and understanding. He was the gravedigger, working late, perhaps preparing a new plot, or simply tending to the silent inhabitants of his domain. He extended a trembling, earth-stained hand towards her, a silent invitation to the world of the living. Eleanor's voice, when she tried to speak, was a raw, hoarse whisper, barely audible above the rustling leaves. Words tumbled out, jumbled and incoherent, a desperate attempt to explain the horror she had endured, the betrayal she had suffered. Buried. Alive. Beatrice. The fever. The gravedigger, a man intimately acquainted with death and its many mysteries, understood enough. He had seen strange things in his long years among the quiet graves, and a reanimated corpse, however unbelievable, was not beyond the realm of his grim experience. With surprising gentleness, he helped her clamber out of the coffin, her legs weak and unsteady beneath her. He draped his rough, wool coat over her shoulders, its warmth a welcome comfort against the biting night air. As Eleanor huddled, shivering beside her own open grave, the gravedigger spoke, his voice low and gravelly. He confirmed her death had been widely known, a tragic loss lamented by many. He spoke of the grand funeral, the elaborate coffin, and the grieving family who had paid their respects. He mentioned Beatrice, her cousin, who had appeared inconsolable, her tears flowing freely, her grief seemingly profound. The words were a bitter draught for Eleanor, confirming the depth of Beatrice's deception, the cruel artistry of her betrayal. The injustice of it all, the audacity of her cousin's performance, tasted like ashes in her mouth. A plan, cold and sharp as the night air, began to crystallize in Eleanor's mind. She could not simply return. Her death was a perfect cover, an unexpected gift in the midst of her torment, a new identity, a new path, a chance to reclaim what was hers and to exact a measured revenge. The gravedigger, a solitary soul with a kind heart beneath his weathered exterior, listened intently to her whispered plea for help. He agreed to help her disappear, to become a ghost in the world, a phantom seeking justice. His own life was simple, his needs few, and the injustice of her story resonated with his quiet sense of morality. As Eleanor looked back at her open grave, a chilling sight met her eyes. Nestled on the freshly turned soil, a single perfect rose lay, its petals dark against the earth. It was a stark, poignant reminder of who thought her gone, a final cruel flourish from Beatrice, a silent testament to her supposed victory. But Beatrice was wrong. Eleanor Vance was not gone. She had merely been reborn, rising from the grave with a fierce, unyielding purpose. Eleanor Vance, now a phantom in her own life, embraced the necessity of transformation. The gravedigger, true to his word, provided her with simple, sturdy clothes, a few coins from his meager savings, and a quiet, abandoned cottage on the outskirts of a neighboring village. She adopted the name Elara, a subtle echo of her past, and shed the delicate trappings of her former life. Her once soft hands, accustomed only to embroidery and piano keys, learned the calluses of rough labor, tending a small garden, fetching water, and chopping wood. The gentlewoman of status slowly but surely hardened into a woman of fierce resilience, her spirit tempered by the earth and the raw struggle for survival. Each day was a lesson in blending in observing from the shadows, in becoming invisible to the world that believed her dead. Her primary goal, however, was not simply survival, but the meticulous gathering of information. From her hidden vantage point, she began to weave a delicate web of intelligence, piecing together the threads of Beatrice's life since Eleanor's supposed demise. She learned of Beatrice's surprisingly rapid ascent in society, her charm and cunning having secured her a prominent position among the local elite. The most painful revelation, however, was the news of Beatrice's engagement to James. The thought of her beloved, caught in the web of Beatrice's deceit, twisted Eleanor's gut with a mixture of sorrow and burning indignation. Whispers began to reach her ears, hushed tales of Beatrice's ruthlessness, her insatiable ambition, her cold calculation beneath a veneer of genteel grace. The ornate locket, once a symbol of James's love, now felt heavier, a tangible piece of her old life, a secret strength held close to her heart, a constant reminder of what she had lost and what she intended to reclaim. The shadow of the impending confrontation loomed large in Eleanor's mind. She would often watch James from afar, a ghostly observer to his life, She saw the pain in his eyes, the forced smile that didn't quite reach them, the subtle stoop of his shoulders. Her desire for revenge against Beatrice burned with an incandescent fury, an inferno of righteous anger. Yet, intertwined with this inferno was a deep, aching yearning to protect James, to spare him further sorrow. This conflict raged within her. Should she expose Beatrice and risk shattering James's perception of the woman he was about to marry, potentially causing him immense heartbreak? Or should she protect him from the truth, allowing Beatrice to triumph and consolidate her hold over him? The emotional toll of living this double life, hovering between realms, was immense, each day a new strain on her weary soul. Then, fate intervened in the form of an unexpected ally. A chance encounter in the village market brought her face to face with an old family servant, Martha, dismissed by Beatrice shortly after Eleanor's funeral. Martha, bitter and fiercely loyal to Eleanor, recognized her immediately, despite the changed appearance. Tears streamed down Martha's weathered cheeks as she embraced Eleanor, whispering tales of Beatrice's cruelty and avarice. Martha provided crucial details, a trove of evidence that began to connect the disparate pieces of the puzzle. A hidden will, meticulously altered by Beatrice, a secret letter from Eleanor's father, detailing his true wishes regarding his estate, and even a small vial of a sedative, found discreetly discarded in Eleanor's chambers after her death. Martha, having served the Vance family for decades, had suspected foul play all along, and had diligently gathered these incriminating items. Eleanor now possessed the means to expose Beatrice, to dismantle her carefully constructed facade. The path forward became clear, sharp, and chillingly precise. She would plan a dramatic revelation, a public unmasking at Beatrice and James's engagement party, a grand affair that promised to be the social event of the season. The stakes were higher than ever, her life, James's future, and her family's legacy hanging precariously in the balance. As Eleanor meticulously prepared for this ultimate confrontation, she overheard a disturbing conversation between two gossiping villagers. They spoke of Beatrice, her nervous energy, and a cryptic comment she had made about having a contingency plan should any unforeseen difficulties arise. A shiver of apprehension ran down Eleanor's spine. Beatrice, it seemed, was even more cunning than she had anticipated. The grand ballroom of the Vance estate shimmered under the gaslight, a vibrant tapestry of silk, lace, and whispered conversations. Eleanor, now Ilara, moved through the crowd like a phantom, her simple dark gown a stark contrast to the opulent attire of the guests. Yet her presence, honed by hardship, held an undeniable power. She was a ghost returned, observing the living, her heart a drumbeat of anticipation and dread. Her gaze found Beatrice, radiant in ivory lace, clutching James's arm. He stood beside her, a handsome figure, yet his eyes, even from a distance, held a weariness, a subdued acceptance that tore at Eleanor's soul. The air was thick with tension, a storm brewing beneath the surface of polite society, perceptible only to Eleanor, and perhaps to the old family servant Martha, who stood discreetly by the refreshments, her gaze fixed on her former mistress. Memories both sweet and bitter flooded Eleanor, the echoes of a life stolen, a love betrayed. As the engagement toast began, a hush fell over the room. James, with a forced smile, raised his glass. This was Eleanor's moment. With a quiet, determined step, she moved to the center of the ballroom, her voice, though soft, carrying an unexpected authority that cut through the silence. "Before we celebrate this union," she began, "there is a truth that must be unveiled." Gasps rippled through the astonished crowd. James's glass faltered, his eyes widening in disbelief, then a flicker of recognition, followed by a surge of hope, illuminated his face. Beatrice, initially dismissive, her smile tightening, slowly turned to face Eleanor, her expression contorting into a mask of pure terror as she recognized the woman she had buried. Eleanor, her gaze unwavering, presented the evidence with a calm, devastating precision. She held aloft the locket, its intricate design catching the light, a silent testament to her identity. Martha, stepping forward with unwavering loyalty, produced the hidden will, its clauses clearly outlining Eleanor's rightful inheritance, and the secret letter from Eleanor's father, explicitly disinheriting Beatrice for her manipulative nature. The old servant then recounted her testimony, detailing Beatrice's cruel dismissal and the discovery of the sedative vial. Beatrice, her carefully constructed facade shattering, attempted to deny, to deflect, her voice rising in shrill accusations against Eleanor, calling her a madwoman, a specter. But the weight of the evidence, coupled with Martha's unwavering account, was overwhelming. Her composure crumbled completely, her true, ruthless nature laid bare for all to see. The guests, initially stunned, began to turn on Beatrice, their whispered conversations escalating into open accusations. Beatrice's power and influence, so meticulously cultivated, vanished in an instant, her reputation irrevocably destroyed. She stood alone, a figure of scorn and pity, her grand aspirations reduced to ashes. James, his face a mixture of shock and profound relief, rushed to Eleanor, enveloping her in an embrace that spoke volumes of his enduring love and his agonizing grief. A tearful reunion unfolded before the stunned onlookers, a love rekindled from the ashes of betrayal. He apologized for his blindness, his desperate sorrow having clouded his judgment, forever doubting her, for not seeing Beatrice's true colors. Eleanor, in his arms, felt the last vestiges of her bitterness dissolve, replaced by the profound warmth of forgiveness and the promise of a future. Eleanor, no longer a victim but a survivor risen from the grave, chose to rebuild her life not on vengeance, but on the enduring power of love and redemption. She and James, their bond forged in the crucible of adversity, embarked on a new life together, far from the shadows of the past. The kind gravedigger, her first ally, was generously rewarded for his discretion and unwavering support, ensuring his comfort in his twilight years. Eleanor's extraordinary story, a testament to resilience and the triumph of justice, became a legend whispered through the towns, a cautionary tale for the ambitious and a beacon of hope for the wronged. She and James, forever bound by the extraordinary circumstances of her return, found their true beginning, a life brimming with the quiet joy of a love that had conquered even death itself.